Hello, my name is Damon Friedman, co-founder and president of SOF Missions. As a 20-year veteran within Special Operations, I've gone through many challenges due to my military service and time in combat. We felt called to start SOF Missions to serve our fellow brothers and sisters in arms, focusing on suicide prevention and resiliency. Our mission at SOF Missions is to empower warriors to find purpose and be resilient. Since 2011, when we started the organization, almost 3 million men and women have deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan. Unfortunately, the scars of war take a toll on their psychological, physical, social, and spiritual health. Many veterans feel a sense of hopelessness and a loss of purpose when they return to civilian life. They feel isolated and alone, unable to reconnect. And in the greatest of tragedies, over 20 veterans lose all hope and take their own lives. Our goal at SOF Missions is to provide veterans the tools and resources so that they don't become a statistic. We offer a unique approach to combating veteran suicide through a whole health, intradisciplinary model. The Be Resilient program is a 4-pillar methodology that addresses the areas of psychological, physical, social, and spiritual wellness. We provide care through 3 delivery methods: medical clinics, retreats, and educational training. Since we started back in 2011, we have been able to reach veterans in all 50 states and have served over 3,000 veterans through the Be Resilient program. Being resilient is a multifaceted and complex issue. We know that to find a lasting solution, we have to address the whole warrior. Many challenges cannot be solved by providing the treatments and modalities of just one component, but by tackling them all. Now, we've expanded our services to include law enforcement and first responders. Together, we can make a lasting impact in the lives of warriors across the nation. To learn more, visit our website at sofmissions.org.
All right. Welcome back.
Misfit Nation. The Misfit Nation Show.
We are a show founded by a veteran and hosted by 2 veterans and a military spouse. Our mission is to get people to tell their stories to the world. If you're an author, share your tips with the Misfit Nation. If you're a musician or an actor, our audience need to know how they too can get into the business. Coaches, we love our coaches. Come on and share your tips with the Misfit Nation to help them become better versions of themselves. If you are a corporate leader or an entrepreneur, come on and show how you did it and how hard you have fought for success. If you are a veteran, first responder, or Gold Star family, we would love to have you come on and share your story with the Misfit Nation. We always have time for you. If you're feeling down, alone, or starting to see the darkness, Stop. Think about those who are around you. You are not alone. You will be missed. If you feel like your problems will be a burden to those in your inner circle or feel embarrassed, dial 988. If you are a veteran, take option 1. We need you to keep pushing forward. Don't make a permanent solution to a temporary problem. If you are a new listener, welcome to the Misfit Nation Show. Be sure to subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast app. Also on our YouTube channel at @the_Misfit Nation. Subscribe and click the bell to keep you up to date on our latest episodes and all of our news. You can also find us on Heroes Media Group and About Face Radio. Now, let's get to the show!
All right. Welcome back to the Misfit Nation Show. It's our Sunday after dinner edition. I know you guys can be doing something way different than this, but you choose to fly with us. Thank you for racking up your freaking flyer miles, and go Irish. Tonight, we have a great guest. Joining us now is journalist, novelist, and writing coach, John DeDakis. He's a former editor of CNN's The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer. During his 45-year career in journalism, he was a White House correspondent during Ronald Reagan's presidency. That's pretty awesome. He is the author of six award-winning mystery suspense thriller novels. Plus, he's a manuscript editor and motivational speaker. His specialty is helping wannabe writers become published authors. He also inspires people struggling with grief to use writing as a way to find healing. So without further ado, let's welcome John into the Misfit Nation. Welcome, John.
Thank you very much, Rich. It's good to be here.
It's great to have you here on this Sunday night, Labor Day weekend. Hope you're having a great weekend, and thank you for taking some of your time to hang out with us tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
John, I just gave you're basically your elevator speech. If you don't mind, give the audience a little bit more meat and potatoes about John from as far back as you want to go to what we're doing now.
Well, I mean, I'm very impressed with your open and quite in line with your emphasis on finding hope, given how hopeless some people feel. And I can relate. I mean, I was suicidal probably when I was 19, 20 years old. The Vietnam War was a big deal back then. I was number 14 in the first draft lottery.
Wow.
Not really interested in going to Vietnam. And I didn't come close to killing myself, but I thought about it. And that's what got my attention. And I stepped away from it. However, my older sister did take her life in 1980. And so I've been around it. And I liked the comment about don't let a major, or I can't remember the exact quote, but it was something like, don't make a choice that's forever when it's only a temporary problem. And that's the thing with suicide. At least it was the thing in the way I was thinking. It was tunnel vision. You're only thinking of yourself and the meaningless of your situation, and you're not realizing that other people will be affected. And that was certainly the case when my sister took her life. It was, she had tunnel vision, and for her reasons, she thought it was the right thing to do. And she was only 38 years old. So fast forward a little bit, I did have to go into the service. I enlisted to avoid the draft because that way I'd have more control over what I'd do. And one of the things I teach my writing students is that life doesn't turn out the way you expect. In journalism, it's a story. In real life, it's often a crisis. But in fiction, it's a plot twist, and we all have them. And in my case, I got orders to Vietnam, but 2 weeks before I was to ship out, my orders were changed to Germany. And I spent the next 2.5 years at the headquarters of the American Forces Radio and Television Network in Frankfurt, Germany, doing interviews for a special events radio unit. And the first interview I was assigned to do was with this guy named Alfred Hitchcock.
Oh, wow.
Maybe you've heard of him. And that was a mentoring moment because my boss, Herb Glover, he used to work at CBS with Walter Cronkite. He could have done the interview in his sleep, and he trusted this kid not to screw it up. And what I discovered was what I was good at and what I loved. And when you put those two things together, you've got some purpose and propulsion in your life. So I got out of the Army, went back to the University of Wisconsin, got a degree in journalism, and that's what I did for 45 years before I started writing novels.
Wow. Big name drop there with Alfred Hitchcock.
All right.
Throw that out there real quick.
It's all downhill from here, man.
I mean, I accidentally downloaded one of his novels the other day on my Audible. Just hit the wrong button, and now I have it on my Audible, so I'll be reading it here soon. So it just coincides with this. That's pretty awesome.
Why is this called Misfit Nation? Help me understand that.
Right. Misfit Nation stems from my platoon when I was in Afghanistan, 2010, 2011. We were called the Misfits because everyone in my platoon came from other places, other units. Other units were either overflowing or they didn't have use for these soldiers, so they all sent them to me. So it was the Island of Misfit Boys. And we took the name the Misfits and later on called it the Misfit Nation.
That reminds me a little bit of my first day in the Army. I was at in Minneapolis, and it was the intake, and they put us up in a hotel overnight before they shipped us off to Fort Lewis for basic training by train. And my roommate that night was this black guy. And of course, I come from Lily White, La Crosse, Wisconsin. So this was my first experience with an African American. And I was, chatty guy. And I said, "So what'd you do before you went in?" And the guy says, "Man, I was pimping." And I go, "I'm in the Army now."
Yes, you are. Wow, that's outstanding. You got to be in the White House with Ronald Reagan. How was that?
That was a great experience. I mean, I had always wanted to cover I had actually wanted to be president back when I was probably 13, and I held that plan for probably 5 years. And for the good of the nation, I went in a different direction. But I was always interested in politics, and so covering the White House was the next best thing to being president. And it was a great experience. And I probably the biggest takeaway was that I discovered that it is it is an adversarial relationship. No matter who the president is, they don't like their press coverage because it's the press secretary's job to make the president look perfect. It's our job as reporters to find out what's really going on. And so that just sets up, the conflict.
Was that the only president you were in the White House with, or did you get any more?
That was the only president I covered. I did cover Ford when he made a brief visit to Mackinac Island in the summer of '75. But I wasn't a White House correspondent at the time. I just happened to cross paths with him. And I interviewed Jimmy Carter after he left the White House.
Wow, that had to be impressive too. I always tell people he has a bad rap as a president, but an awesome rep as a human being. He did so much after the presidency that you can't match him. You can't match what he's done after. It's
That's
amazing
right.
what he's done and the people he's helped.
Yep, exactly.
You talked about how the press corps is supposed to bring out the truth from the White House. The White House is trying to dodge that. How is Ronald Reagan with that? He seemed like more of the he had that actor background, so he had that kind of comedic in him, but he also had a good stage presence and it seemed like he could go back and forth with people. How was he in that?
He was really affable and very approachable. And you're right. He had a great sense of humor. And, say what you will about his policies, but, as a person, he was very engaging. And, he was able to reach across the aisle to the Democrats. Nowadays, that would be considered treasonous, literally treasonous. And so I think that he gets a lot of points for being the kind of person he was. He was, he wasn't necessarily a detail person, but he knew how to delegate and he knew, what he wanted. And so, we are in a different territory now.
We're in a way different territory. It's hard to see how it's so divided. The only person you see going across the aisle right now is Fetterman from Pennsylvania, and that's one that you wouldn't think would do it. But he's the only one that kind of stays down the middle right now, and it's kind of nice to see that a little bit.
Yeah, it really is, and I don't know how long it's going to take before we get back to something like that.
And I think that's why our country is so great, that we work together to find a way to solve the problems for everybody.
Right.
I want to get into more of the stuff you've done. I mean, Alfred Hitchcock blew my mind on that one, but but now you have 6 novels out there, six books you brought out there, and political thrillers, and you write your lead character is a woman in most of them, is what I believe, right? Yes. So why did you choose that?
I didn't set out to write as a woman and in any kind of a calculated way. When I started playing around with writing fiction, someone suggested that I should write in a way that stretches who I am. Never been a woman, at least not in this life. So I gave it a try, and I discovered that emotions are not gender specific. We all have the exact same emotions. It's just that the women in my life are more willing to share their emotions, and they're more articulate about the emotions they share. So I wrote as a woman, and then I worked at CNN for 25 years. And so I was around young women in their early to mid 20s who would tell me what it's like to be a woman. And I would ask them questions, and they'd tell me what it's like, what their, romances are like, their careers, their families, all that stuff. And I'd learned quickly that it's different. And here's one quick insight I got. There was an anchor I worked with who was beautiful. And I remember asking her, "What's it like for guys to come on to you all the time?" And she said, "I can tell in the first 20 seconds if I'm safe." And I never have to worry about being safe in a conversation. And that's when I realized at least one little nugget is that being a woman means playing defense. And so it was little tidbits like that that I picked up that gave me empathy, I think, for what it's like to be a woman. And then many of these women became beta readers and read early drafts of the manuscript to tell me what's not working. Oh, you're muted, I think.
When you made Lark Chadwick as the lead character, did any of your coworkers, any of their traits go into Lark, or was it just off the cuff?
Yes, and yes.
Yes.
and to be honest, she's a lot like me. I mean, Lark has anger issues. She's impulsive, and I know that really well. So so I drew from that as well. I mean, any writer will draw from personal experience. Characters are composites of people different traits that you bring together. So sure, all of that is wrapped up in who Lark is.
Awesome. Before we get deeper into the books, we got a question from the audience. This is from Jake Holland. He's one of our hosts of our Tuesday show. What's your opinion on how the press treats the current administration? Thanks, Jake.
That's a very good question. And I don't know if we have enough time to go into it because the press and the media make it sound like it's a monolith. Media is plural. And you've got a lot of different news organizations that are out there. Typically, you've got, the front row is the Associated Press, Reuters, the major television networks. The second row is probably the New York Times, the Washington Post. Now they have instituted what they call new media, and that is a rotating thing. And so, right inside the pocket door to the lower press office, someone representing new media is sitting there, and they're usually asking softball questions of the president or the press secretary, whereas the mainstream media is asking the nuts and bolts questions about, what's going on, why did he do this, how does this square with that. It's holding the power accountable. And so it's a complicated answer because there are so many facets now to journalism. It's changed significantly even since I was there. I mean, I was covering Reagan in the late 80s, and I left CNN in 2013 when I was one of Wolf Blitzer's editors. I was at CNN 25 years. And even since then, journalism has changed. And probably the biggest change is what they call influencers. These are citizen journalists. Many of them have never been to journalism school, don't have a clue what journalists do. They have hundreds of thousands of followers, and there's no editor on their shoulder going, "Where'd you get that? How do you know that's true?" They're just slavishly articulating a point of view. And that's true on the left and the right, by the way. And so it's the Wild West out there in journalism now, even though there are still reputable news organizations with editorial oversight, the Associated Press, Reuters, New York Times, just to name three, where they are doing their best to try to fact check, try to add context and depth. You can get the news, and my suggestion is turn off the TV. Don't watch CNN, MSNBC, or Fox. Read it. Read the facts, and then make up your own mind. I was at a writers' conference, and a woman shook her finger at me and said, "You're nothing but fake news." And I said, "Where do you get your news?" She said, "Breitbart." And my jaw dropped because Breitbart makes it up. And she said, before I could say anything, she said, "Well, I have to have my opinion reinforced." And I'm going, "No, you got to have your opinion informed." And then, go to wherever you want to have, to get analysis or, reinforcing whatever opinion you've got. But, we can't even agree on what the facts are now. And that's a shame. That's really a crying shame.
It's horrible. And you talked about how the influencer or the new media is put off to that little side area. I cover a NASCAR race here in Nashville every year with the show, and they kind of put me in that corner like they put baby in a corner. So all the big wigs are up in the oval room there, and then I'm in the side room with no lighting, I have to step out into the light so they can see me.
Yeah, but the new media gets
Yeah.
the first question in a briefing. So, they're not just anywhere. They're really very close to the action, and they're getting deferential treatment
Outstanding. I think that's awesome.
because they're not asking challenging questions.
Right. They get to warm up the news of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
correspondent's office. The press secretary to get to warm her up, or the president if he's there as well.
Right. Yep.
So now we'll get back into the books. You have 6 of them on here with lady Lark Chadwick series. We got Fast Track, Bluff, and then Troubled Water, Bullet in the Chamber, Fake, the Lark Chadwick mystery, and then Enemies Domestic, which is your newest one.
That's right.
That's amazing to get 6 out of the series.
I'm as surprised as you are.
That was my next question. Did you think you'd have 6 when you wrote the first one?
I had trouble getting one.
Wow.
It took me 10 years to get the agent that I've got. It went through 14 major revisions, and she's the 39th agent that I queried. And we were still together after 20 years. I just wanted to get a book in print, and it took that long because I was making mistakes and getting rejected. And so after a while, you begin to think, well, I could do this, I could do that. And so by the time I was on the cusp of getting my my agent, I was already starting to write Bluff and some of the other, had ideas for the other books.
Wow. That's something you probably get to teach other writers when they come to you for mentorship. Is it's not an easy path, no matter how you do it. Even if you do the self-publishing thing, it's a very mainstream now, I guess, with Amazon or Ingram Spark. You can just write your own stuff, throw it on there. A lot of people don't even get them edited; they just throw it on there.
Oh man, yeah, when I would go to a writer's conference right after I got published, somebody would come up to me and say, here's my 150,000 word tome. Give it a quick read and tell me what you think. Well, with me, there's no such thing as a quick read, and it needs work isn't really going to be helpful. So I monetized it. And because I'd made so many mistakes, I'm able to sort of, deconstruct the process and help people to navigate it and see it first from 30,000 feet. And then we drill down and go deeper so that you can, get good at the different moving parts that are involved in the process.
You mentioned earlier about the influencers as well, the ones who just throw stuff out there. They'll put a picture behind them, like a green screen of an activity that's going on, and then they'll give what they believe is the right opinion on there. How do you believe that social media is actually changing how we do things? Is it a blessing or a curse? And how about artificial intelligence involved with that?
Well, you're throwing a can of worms in here, aren't you?
Trying to help.
Look, let's get one thing straight. Social media and artificial intelligence are morally neutral. In and of themselves, they're not a problem. The internet is great you and I are talking over the internet. That would never have been possible without it. And so there's tremendous reach that exists when you have that kind of opportunity. I wish that it had existed when I was a reporter, because it would have made it easier to interview people. It would have made it easier to get information. The problem, of course, is that it's full of, for lack of a better word, BS, falsehoods. There are lies out there. And so it's hard to really know what to trust. And artificial intelligence, it's here to stay, but there are problems with it. People use it for selfish means. They use it to create deep fakes that will influence voting in a dangerous way, because people will be led to believe things that are true that are not true. It uses up a tremendous amount of resources. They have to build these huge data centers that just suck all the electricity, off the grid in order to maintain this. But it's also valuable as a research tool, as a way to, write your dust jacket copy, to do structuring and research and stuff like that. But it's not really a replacement for creativity, because it doesn't know you, and it can't draw from your own personal experiences. So it's a blessing and a curse.
That's a good answer on that one too. And social media people will say that's a blessing and a curse across the board. When we were deployed, and I think my last deployment, Facebook and all that stuff was on fire, and people would blame that for marital issues.
Yeah.
Facebook was the cause of all evil. It's the devil. It's this. It's the curse. But then it was also a blessing because you could just reach out and say hello to your family with the push of a button instead of standing in line and then hoping you get a connection on the phone.
Exactly. Exactly.
And I know that has changed instrumentally how journalists get their news out as well. Even mainstream media, now it's instantaneous. There's no
It's instant. It's really instant.
There's no copy room. There's nothing in there to cut it out. They can get their news out there immediately and then maybe make some changes to it as it goes. But
Right.
it's now it's in your face.
Very much so. And it's a fire hose, and we need to be much more discerning about what we consume.
Definitely. I think we've grown too attached to the instant news. And when you don't get it immediately, that causes even more problems.
Yeah.
Like the other day in Minnesota with the shooting at the church, everyone wanted to know instantaneously who was it, why'd that person do it, and what's going on. Let the police do their job.
Yeah.
Let them understand what's going on themselves because they can't answer the question.
Exactly. Yeah. We got to let some time elapse in order to find out what's going on.
All right, now we're going to a harder question.
These have been pretty hard, man.
I've been trying to give you the softer, the harder, soft ones now. Now I'm going to get this one.
Okay.
Your fourth novel is more personal to you, Bullet in the Chamber.
Yeah.
It deals with your son and what happened with him with his heroin overdose. Why would you want to tackle that, something such as painful as that, into your book? And how did that work going in there?
I can't say that I wanted to do it, but writing, I think good writing comes from a place that's very deep, and it comes from a place that's personal. And it goes all the way back really to Fast Track, which was my first novel, because that's based on a car train collision I witnessed as a kid. 9 years old, 3 people were killed, including a boy my age. And then my sister's suicide, which is it's basically chapter 1 of Fast Track. I was on the scene that day. And so you write what you know, and it was a catharsis. And so now that I've got a series, grief and loss is part of Lark Chadwick's life, my protagonist's life. So as it goes forward, she's trying to live a life, but she is still burdened by these things. And then let's see, my third novel came out, and my youngest son, Stephen, 22 years old, went missing in 2011. He was missing for a week and was found dead in my car of an accidental heroin overdose. And I went through grief counseling, and that was a great therapeutic experience, but I had to write about this. I had to write. It was just a compulsion, I guess you could say. And so I used the story of Stephen's disappearance as a subplot, as part of Lark's life. Someone close to her has something similar happen. And so that makes the story more authentic, and while at the same time being a catharsis and therapeutic for me, the writer. So I guess I was just compelled to do it.
I mean, you got it out there, and it's probably by putting that story in there, even though it's a fictional book, the reader can think about it and say, this could happen in my family. What would I do at this time, and how would I react? And that's how fiction creates the nonfiction world as well. You can see what's happening in the fiction and say, well, that I can understand that's happening the way the words are put in there.
Exactly, because what you're doing is that you are helping the reader get inside the life of your character, of your protagonist. And that's one of the strengths of fiction, I think, because there's that freedom to really get deep inside that character and empathize and experience, and in a sense live vicariously. We are pretty good at trying to be risk averse, but we can live vicariously through a character who is in a dire situation, and we can kind of figure out, well, what would I do? And I think that in a sense informs us and gives us maybe some empathy for other people as well.
Definitely does. And we got another question in the audience. I think this goes right along with the question I just asked you, but written in a better way, I think. what was the hardest part about translating your real life grief into fiction without it feeling too heavy or personal? And that's from Rotunda.
Well, I thank you for the question. And I don't know if I succeeded in that because I cried the whole time I was writing Bullet in the Chamber. And I guess that's maybe a point worth making. And that is, it's okay to cry. And I don't want to overgeneralize, but I think women get it. Crying is an emotional safety valve, but we men, tend to bottle it up. It's considered weakness, and we need to be strong and all that kind of stuff. And I think that's admirable, but I think it's totally unrealistic at the same time, because by bottling it up, it doesn't really make it go away. It just becomes corrosive. And here's one thing I want to throw out there as a basically just a hunch. Look at all the mass shootings that take place. With one or two exceptions, all of the mass shooters are guys. And my hunch is there's a lot of unresolved grief and anger going on there, so that by the time it makes its appearance, the tears have become bullets. My argument is, especially for men who are feeling at wit's end, the world is, turned against them, the walls are closing in. You really need to realize that you can't fix this all by yourself. There is no shame in getting help. There's no shame in being able to talk about it, emote about it, because a counseling situation with a professional, with a trained professional, is a safe place. This person is not emotionally invested in you, and you're not emotionally invested in them. It's not, you don't risk ruining the family or friendships because of it, and you can really unburden yourself. And I'll give you one quick example. I was early in this grief counseling situation, and I said to my grief counselor, there's something I need to tell you, and the only other two people I've ever told this to are dead. And she flinched, and I said, that's not why they're dead. And she relaxed, and I was able to tell her. And it was a major burden that was lifted that I'd been carrying around for years. And it was tremendously freeing. And there'd been so much fear wrapped up in sharing that. And once it was out there and we were able to analyze it, I realized that whatever it was that I was afraid of that was going to happen didn't happen. And I think it was like lancing the boil. And I was able to move on with my life, move forward with it to the point where, after 2 years, she basically said, you don't need me anymore. Have fun with your writing and keep in touch.
Wow. That's awesome to see that it was able to help you get the therapy through writing that I think a lot of people do just by telling their story. Kind of helps people. That's why we started this show, to get people to tell their story.
Absolutely.
And get the pressure off their chest and maybe be with us a little longer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So with that, what would you say to, like, our audience is pretty heavy on the veteran side or first responder side, and a lot of them have stories that they think don't matter to anybody. What would you tell that person right now who feels they don't have that interesting story to tell, but they should probably put it on writing and maybe get it out there?
I don't have a prescription that's a platitude for one size fits all.
Right.
I did some interviews with my dad's World War II unit at one of their reunions. And, these were guys, this is the greatest generation, right? They went against Hitler and at a time when the world was really in trouble. And, they saw some horrific things, and they didn't think anybody else cared. They didn't think they cared. When my dad came back from the war, my mom told me he cried for a week. And I think she's the only one he ever really told everything to. I did a sort of an interview with him, a sort of a living history interview with him. And I heard some of the old stories, but he cried a couple of times telling me some things that he hadn't told me before. And I think that here's one. Here, I'll throw out a couple of ideas. One is that when you write, you don't necessarily need to write for anybody else but you. You know, poetry is helpful. Just writing it down can be helpful. Art can be helpful. Music, you know, any other outlets to get this stuff out. There really is, I think, comfort and healing when you do share the story. And you could, here's another suggestion: do it a little at a time and see if there's interest, and see if anybody asks follow-up questions, because they, you know, you're kind of dumping something on them, but if they care, and not everyone does, but you know, an empathetic, open-minded person will ask follow-up questions, and that's giving you permission, you know, to go deeper. I remember, I'm just kind of after my wife's mom died. I remember her saying something, and I think this still applies in any kind of a grief situation. She said, "I'm afraid to cry because I don't think I'll ever be able to stop." And yeah, I think that's a real feeling, and there's a tremendous release when you do that. You will stop crying, but you know, at first there's that fear of just kind of coming apart completely. But look, I'm talking to guys who are way more courageous than I am. You know, you faced life and death situations, and I haven't, not really. But the interesting thing about fear is that it exaggerates. And apologize for taking a long answer, but this, I think, is relatable to especially a military audience. I have what you call the fear continuum. There's recklessness. That's the absence of fear. There's caution, which means counting the cost. There's no shame there. Can this kill me? Can I lose my health? Will I go bankrupt? You know, we all go through that. There's cowardice. That's knowing what you should do and freezing and not doing it. And then there's courage. But the interesting thing about courage is that it's not the absence of fear. I mean, the guys who stormed the beaches of Normandy, were they afraid? They were terrified. And you were probably terrified when, you know, you were facing a life and death situation. And how did you deal with it? You went forward anyway. You harnessed the fear. Now, you've already done this in a life and death situation. Talking to nobody's shooting at you when you're going to a counselor. You've already been through the worst. So just remember what that felt like, harness the fear, and go forward, because, you know, there's nothing worse than what you've already gone through.
That's great advice right there. And Misfit Nation, remember, like John just said, you've been through a lot worse than you think you have, and you faced an evil that many people don't have to face in their lives. You can't keep pushing forward. And
Yeah.
while I'm talking, 2 questions popped in. See if I get them right here. This is from @356 Run It Back. After 45 years in journalism, what lessons carried over into writing political thrillers? Thank you, 356.
Well, writing, there are certain things about journalism that definitely carry over to fiction. And this has nothing to do with politics and everything to do with writing. And that is, whether you're working at a newspaper or working in broadcast, you only have so much real estate and you only have so much time, which means you have to write tight, you have to write efficiently, and you have to write fast. And writing fiction, well, I put that fast part out. I've got procrastination nailed. It's taking me like 2 years to write a book. I could do it faster, but you know, why bother? But it has helped me write succinctly. Journalism is also storytelling. It's about real life, and probably the thing that makes a thriller thrilling is the ticking clock. I mean, I used to deal with the ticking clock every day, all the time. You know, is this going to make it on time? And in thrillers, is the bomb going to go off? Is the world going to blow up? And so you're putting a character in a deadline, life and death deadline situation. And so what you want to do is to write in a way that will cause the reader to turn the page as opposed to turn out the light. You want to have high stakes. Lives are at stake, jobs are at stake, relationships are at stake. You want to keep that pacing going. You want to end a chapter making the reader want to know what happens next. So you don't want to give away stuff. You want to add anticipation to the story. And that's real life. I mean, that's what's so cool about writing fiction. It's just like living. There are settings, there are situations, there are stakes, and you move forward without knowing how it's going to turn out. Life is improv, and so is writing.
Outstanding. And another question came in, 356. I hope that answered your question. This one's from Pine Tar No. I guess they like the Kansas City Royals or something. For someone dealing with loss, how can they start writing as a way to heal, even if they don't see themselves as a writer? I think you hit
that's an excellent question, because there are so many people who don't consider them writers. Many of them are best-selling authors. You know, it's the whole imposter syndrome. And if you have put pen to paper, even if you're thinking about your story, if you're, Stephen King says you got to write 1,000 words a day. Great, if you're Stephen King. But for the rest of us mere mortals, how do you feel about yourself if you've only written 200 words a day or 0 over and over again? Exactly. You feel like you suck, you're not a writer. But if you've even ruminated about writing, or you've done any writing, you are a writer. In order to get once you're published, then you're an author. But writing is something that writers do, whether they're published or not. But here's the thing. I would suggest that if you've got the desire to write, then just write. And don't worry about being fancy or being writerly. Just write and let it come from within you. And I suggest here's one writing exercise. Put 10 minutes on a timer and do a job interview with one of your characters. Okay, you haven't even started a novel, you have no clue what you're going to write. Great. Do a job interview. Who are you and why do you want to be in my book? Set your timer, start it, and then record what the voice says that shows up. Just start writing, automatic writing, because a voice will show up. Because writing is like dipping a straw into your subconscious, and asking a question is like taking a sip. And when you start writing, it's coming through your fingers and onto the page. It's bypassing that critical scold editor, saying, you can't write that. Just write it onto the page without judging it. Because it's coming from a place, it's coming from real depth. It's coming from personal experiences that you've had, your subconscious. And it's now you've tapped into that, and see how that goes. It'll either be the shortest or the longest 10 minutes of your life. But my hunch is a voice will show up. And if the guy says, I don't want to be in your book, say, why not? Follow up, ask follow-up questions, and make sure you keep the pen moving and don't even lift it up for 10 minutes. See what happens.
That's great advice. Now that you become used to help others through editing, what's the most common mistake you see writers make as they try to get through that first book or that first thing they're doing?
Well, first-time writers make a lot of mistakes, as do I, and I've been, experienced doing this. Probably the biggest mistake people make is they tell as opposed to show. And it's understandable, because especially when you're writing that first draft, it's just tumbling out and you're not worried about dialogue and, any of that stuff. You're just getting it down there. You're telling the story. But in the rewrite, you want to look for a way to make that story come alive and be vivid. And in order for that to happen, my suggestion is get characters talking to each other. Don't worry about, not being good at dialogue, because have you ever had a conversation with someone? That's dialogue. So get people talking, because that gets the characters on the stage, and that deepens character and moves the plot along. And you can make it vivid as they are interacting with each other. So backstory, too much backstory is a problem. I'll say one more thing and then I'll shut up. I was at a conference about a year ago, and there were 3 agents who were sitting at a table up in front, and they were listening to the first page of an anonymously submitted manuscript. And their job was to raise their hand at the point at which they would be sending a rejection letter. This is after one page. And two of the agents were raising their hands simultaneously. And they said, we liked the character. You know, you were intriguing me. And then all of a sudden you're giving me backstory, all this context, all the stuff that happened years ago. I don't know if that's the story. Put me in the story and sprinkle all that other stuff in as you go. And so that's something I think to bear in mind, because I think if we draw from personal experience, when you meet someone, you don't know their whole story. You find out their whole story by having a conversation with them. And many times that happens over, days, weeks, months, and even years. So, and yet you're still having some sort of a dynamic rapport with them in which something is going on. And so storytelling is like the way we live life, cause and effect.
Definitely it is. 100%. We've talked about your 6 books and how you've gone through with the Lark Chadwick mysteries. What are you working on now?
Well, let's see. I'm working on a short story for an anthology on yacht rock. Yacht rock is sort of the music of the 70s. And so my job is to take one of the songs of the Doobie Brothers and build a crime story around it. And so the working title is Black Water, which is one of their hits. And so I've put a couple of characters in a situation, and we'll see if the editor goes for it. I have a memoir that is at Kensington right now that is being assessed. I don't know if it's going to get published. I may have to self-publish it, but the working title is Plot Twists, a memoir on writing and living. I've basically identified the pivotal moments in my life that have got me to where I am now. And my wife and I are working on book 7 in the Lark Chadwick series. We worked on book 6 to get together. Most of my books I like to plan, but I also do a lot of seat of the pants writing. But with Enemies Domestic, the most recent one, Cindy and I kind of came up with the idea at the same time, and we talked about it. I would write it, and then she would read each chapter. And the process was despair because of the empty page, writing, getting the characters talking, victory, I got something done, taking it up, showing it to Cindy, and then we're back at despair again. And so that's the process. And so we're working on book 7 that way too.
It's outstanding. There's a lot of things going on at once in the yacht rock. I've been watching a lot of videos online of people turning in old classic rock songs into yacht rock and old country songs into yacht rock. And just
cool.
The process of doing that, just funny listening to them turn them into yacht rock songs. I think it's just a great new medium, I guess.
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
We got a question from Old Man River. Old Man on River. Your journey.
Wow, this is great.
Your journey to finding a literary agent took a decade. What advice do you have for writers facing that rejection?
Take my class, because if you take good notes, I'll save you 9 years in the process. It need not take 10 years. And Rich, as you mentioned, there's self-publishing, and there's no shame in that. It's much more available now than it was when I was starting out. If you want to get your book out there tonight, you can upload it onto Amazon. It'll suck because it's riddled with typos and it's flabby and all those other things. But, it is now more than ever, it's possible to get a book published. But what I recommend is that you try to go the traditional route and get an agent, because that will bring your writing to a professional level. And so I suggest going to writers' conferences. That's where I met my agent, because writers' conferences usually are attended by published authors who are teaching classes and on panels talking about the craft and the business of writing. Agents go to these places looking for clients. You have opportunities to pitch them, and you're around other people, because writing can be a very solitary experience. And so being around other people helps you realize, whoa, I'm not as alone as I thought I was. But bottom line, do your best about getting better and learning from the mistakes you make. Get that critical feedback from someone who's objective about reading what you're writing, and then just, listen to what they say. If they say, I didn't understand what was going on page 200, You don't want to be that guy that goes, well, if you'd been paying attention on page 5, you'd understand. Just don't be defensive. Be, open to correction and learning. I mean, anybody who's gone through basic training knows that trick.
Learn constructive criticism very quickly, or you leave.
Or else, right?
It's the or else portion, yes.
Yeah.
I'll take one last audience question. This one is from Liz Was Here 43. Looking back,
I love these names.
I'm always guessing what they're supposed to mean, but
Yeah, really.
looking back, what's been more challenging, covering real world breaking news or creating fictional worlds that resonate with truth?
They're both challenging in different ways. If you're covering real world breaking news, the challenge is to find out the facts. And journalism is it's about trying to find the truth, but it's not the big T, capital T truth of what's the meaning of life. A day-to-day story is it's truth that's like the little mosaic, the tile in the mosaic. And so the challenge is on deadline to find out what the facts are, knowing that you're only getting part of the story. And so that's a challenge. The part about writing fiction that's hard is making it up. But it's very freeing. And it was hard for me to give myself permission to make it up. But once you make it up, writing fiction, man, you've just tapped into something really powerful. And the challenge is stopping, I think, because once that genie's out of the bottle, man, it's there.
It's hard to cap that bottle back up, and once you have the bug, it
Yeah.
is hard. I didn't know I could write until I wrote a self-help book by accident during COVID. I was just writing stupid stuff on Facebook, and my daughter told me I should put it into a book, so I did.
Good for her.
Yeah.
It always takes somebody else, it takes somebody else, because we are great at talking ourselves out of doing stuff that we're good at.
Yes. And she said she was my editor too. So because she already had a book published by this time, and she's now working on getting her second book published. Very proud of the things she's doing. And
my daughter was the same way. She actually now has a PhD in creative writing, but
Wow.
when she was still, a high school student, she read one of my early drafts, and she's this, snarky kid, and she wrote in the margin, SEW is for needle and thread. SOW is for seed, Mr. Copy Editor.
Oh, wow. Gotta love it.
I know.
That's outstanding. So
Yeah.
John, we blazed through 50 minutes here, 52 minutes. It's gone very, very fast. You gave us a lot of information, a lot of great things. And
Thank you.
still, Alfred Hitchcock is still in my head. Ronnie Reagan's in my head. Jimmy Carter's in my head. Your six. You've done a lot of amazing things over your career.
Well, I'm old, man.
You're old, so it's a big thing now. How does someone get in contact with you if they want you to be on their show? If any of my listeners have shows and want you on there, or just to pick your brain?
Absolutely. The best way for everything, one-stop shopping, is my website, which is my name.com, johndedakis.com. It's one of those tricky Greek names, as I'll spell it. JOHN, D as in dog, E, D as in dog, A, KIS as in Sam.com, johndedakis.com.
And that's for those watching this on video. It's going across the bottom of the screen right now. It's also in the chat. It will be in the show notes for those who get this on audio later. John, one last question I'll ask you before I let you off the hot seat. I ask my audience this question, my guest this question before I let them go every night. What's 3 things the Misfit Nation can start doing tomorrow to make them better people?
Breathe. That's number 1. Take a breath, because we spend all our time regretting the past and fearing the future. And I think we're most effective in the moment. Just take a breath, and another and another. That's number 1. It's another suggestion. This is just a suggestion. Start a journal if you don't have one. Just start capturing those thoughts and fears and issues, and, just start getting it down. It's just for you. 3, if you've got, a mental health crisis, if you feel the walls are closing in on you, get help. Really reach out to a professional. And don't be afraid. You don't be afraid. I mean, it's okay to be afraid, but don't let the fears cripple you. That if from being in the foxholes and the trenches and all that kind of stuff, that fear can be paralyzing and it can cause cowardice. And you're not a coward. You have lived through and faced worse fears than what you're going through now. And so my suggestion is to harness the fear and move forward. Take that hill, which is not nearly as daunting as what you've already been up against. Talk to somebody who can help you help yourself.
Outstanding. Those are 3 great things. Misfit Nation, write them down. If you need to go back through the show and listen to it again, get those 3 things down. Those are 3 great, good ones. And like John said, get the help you need. John, thank you for hanging out with us tonight on this Labor Day weekend. It's been awesome chatting with you. I learned a lot tonight. I know the Misfit Nation garnered a lot of information from you as well. Thank you for sharing your journey with us.
Oh, man, you're welcome. Thank you. And thanks, everybody, for your questions.
Outstanding. Misfit Nation, thanks for being active tonight. And thank you for hanging out with us instead of just watching the games or NASCAR or whatever you could be doing tonight. This has been awesome. Like John just said, a day tomorrow with you is better than a day without you. Get the help you need. Call 988. It's not just for the military. It's for everybody. If you are a veteran, take option 1. Otherwise, follow the prompts. Get the help. If you don't want to call them and you feel embarrassed to call them, reach out to us. info@themisfitnation.com, Steven@themisfitnation.com, or Jake@themisfitnation.com. We will get back to you. We will call you. We'll sit on the phone until help gets there. We don't want to lose you. Be with us, and we want to see you Tuesday night. Have a great night, Misfit Nation.
Thanks for checking us out and being a part of the Misfit Nation Show. Don't forget to visit our website at themisfitnation.com. That's themisfitnation.com. Check out all our past episodes and get some of the great Misfit Nation gear for you and your family. As always, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling because we are
Misfit Nation. Misfit Nation.